I'm pretty excited about these Cooke SP3s because I have been longing for a small Cinema Prime setup for a long time. And when it's Cooke, then it's pretty exciting. So today, thanks to B&H for sending these lenses out, I have the entire set of the Cooke SP3s from the 18mm all the way to 100mm. So we're just in the backyard today, just gonna roll through some different tests and see how they look. Not only can you get rid of your follow focus system, your transmission, and your external monitors and everything that you usually build out your camera rig when you have the Ronin 4D because it has all that stuff built in, but I can also get rid of my cameraman because this thing just follows me around, keeps me in focus, and then I can control it all right from over here. And it's just one of the greatest camera systems ever made, and I do love it. But we're not talking about that today. Today we're talking about the Cooke SP3s, and right off the get-go, here's the 18mm. I don't often shoot this wide, but I have been using the Cooke SP3s on a feature documentary, and having the 18mm now has been really, really nice. We just recently shot in a museum, and to be able to put the 18 on and get our character walking around this museum, seeing all of the giant displays was pretty epic, and it resulted in some pretty epic shots. There's a lot of space around me, and I'm not that far from the camera. So it's a great way to get some really cool wides, some unique angles. You know, you could probably do a lot of different things just to get slightly different types of shots. Well, that'd be cool if someone was sitting there. Maybe I can do a little split screen. And now I'm over here. All right, the sun is coming out. It's getting a little brighter out here, so Ronin 4D, boom, takes care of that. Cooke really touts the close focus of these lenses, and I am only about, I don't know, less than a foot away from the front of this lens, and so it does focus pretty close. I'm not even sure I'm staying in focus because I'm sort of rocking on this chair here. You can get a lot of cool, unique perspectives with this lens, as I'm doing right now. And thank goodness the sun has come out because it is freezing here today in late November in Tennessee. So this is the 25mm, which was the widest in the set before the 18mm came out. And all of these lenses are T2.4, so they're not the fastest lenses in the world, but most Cookes aren't usually the fastest. Even their speed Pancros, I believe, are T2.1s. So you're not losing a ton here for these mirrorless mounts, but they are really small, really lightweight, and the main reason I'm using them for a feature doc is so I can use them on the Ronin 4D. And the Ronin 4D is this perfect pairing with the Cooke SP3s. The other thing about the Cookes is that even they are T2.4, when you do get close, there is a really nice fall off with the background. So the bokeh is still pretty nice. It feels a little faster than a T2.4. It's sort of hard to explain, but to me it feels a little bit more like a T2. Like you still get enough background separation at most of the focal lengths. You're still getting some pretty nice blurry backgrounds, and I'm not that close to the camera right now. If I got a little closer, or you got more of a close-up shot, then as you can see, that you do actually get pretty good background separation, really nice bokeh in the background. You know, T2.4, you can live with it for sure, especially when you get the cooked look out of it. All right, so we got the 32mm on here now, and the 32mm is a pretty cool focal length. It's slightly wider than 35, obviously not as wide as a 28 or 24, 25, but it's kind of this really nice sweet spot where it's getting a little bit of extra field of view than the normal 35, the standard 35, while still having a little bit more compression than some of the wider angle lenses. And so I've been using this one quite a bit for just people talking, action shots. I usually stick with a 50 for most of the stuff that I do, but I really like this 32. It's a very interesting and cool focal length. Let's talk about the build a little bit. They're all metal construction, these Cooke SP3s, and they're just beautifully made as you would expect from Cooke and for the premium price. And the focus rings are all really well dampened and just all very consistent, along with the aperture rings, which are a little bit tougher to turn, which in my opinion is a really good thing. You make sure you only turn it when you actually want to. And there are two main sizes for this lens lineup. The 25, 32, 50, and 75 are all about this size, almost exactly the same in terms of size and weight. So when you're swapping them out on a Ronin 4D or any gimbal system, you don't have to do any rebalancing at all, which is really nice. Now, the size does change a little bit when you get to the 18 and 100mm, and they are a little bit larger, especially here at the top of the lens. So the rings, the aperture rings, the focus rings all still line up perfectly, but these are a little heavier and a little bit longer and then have a different filter diameter, which is a bit of a bummer. You want to be able to share filters across a Cinema Prime lens lineup, but I am fine with it if they kept these smaller, because the option obviously would be to probably just make the other 4 lenses in the set have the same size as the 18-100, and I prefer the smaller sizes because I use these 90% of the time, and these are sort of specialty use cases when you gotta get really wide or get really tight. So here we are, this is focus to infinity, so a little bit behind me. And then if I wanted to focus all the way to its closest focus distance, which is right there. And as you can see, there's a little bit of breathing. Focus breathing is never something that's really bothered me because I don't do a ton of really close focus to far focus racks in my work. It happens very rarely. I'm usually making smaller focus adjustments, something like this, where I'm like all the way to infinity or someone far away or in the distance, and then focus racking to someone, you know, maybe 4 feet away, which is about right there. And again, it's like, if you're just doing that, the focus breathing is very minimal, as you can see on the edges of the frame. But if you go all the way to close focus, I think there in the last few feet or meters, you know, it starts to become a little more evident, but still nothing that would bother me all that much. All right, now time for my favorite lens in the lens lineup, and that is the 50mm, because it's my favorite lens in every lens lineup. And the Cooke 50mm does not disappoint. As you can see here, it still has some beautiful out of focus rendering, lovely bokeh, and even for a T2.4, it has some really nice background separation. Like, I don't need anything faster than this in 90% of the things that I do, and so it completely works for all of my needs. I just love the compression that a 50mm gives you while still giving you a sense of the landscape around the character, so it has this really beautiful combination. All right, so checking the focus breathing on this 50mm, I think, like the 32, when you get closer to that really close focus, it starts to exhibit more. But if you're at infinity and then sort of rolling down to, you know, 6 feet away, nothing that's all that noticeable. And so I wouldn't be concerned about the focus breathing on these lenses at all. Oh, hello. Now, one really nice thing about the Cooke SP3s that maybe some people would say is a detriment is that they are made entirely in mirrorless mounts. And so you can't put them on EF mount or PL mount cameras, which is a bummer, but you can adapt them to pretty much any mirrorless camera or any mirrorless mount camera that's come out in the last 10 years. So it comes in E mount, RF mount, L mount, and M mount. So you can put these on the Burano, the Venice, the FX6, the FX3 and E mount, or any of the RF cinema lineup, the C400, C80, C70, and then of course all the L mount cameras like the Panasonic series, Sigma, or even DJI, which has an L mount. Hold for plane. Now, as I build out my own set of these, I'm going to be changing all the mounts over to M mount because an M mount can be adapted to pretty much any other mirrorless mount out there. So if you do have an E mount SP3, for example, yes, you can use it on the Ronin 4D and all of the Sony cameras, but I don't have any other Sony cameras. Whereas if I change it out to RF mount, that means I can't put it on the Ronin 4D. But the M mount is sort of that sweet spot where if I'm using, say, the Ronin 4D as my A cam and then have the C80 or C70 as my B cam, the M mount is easily adapted to both. There's the close focus of the 50mm, and it is pretty close. Now, I've been doing some, you know, almost macro type shots for the feature doc I'm doing now, and I will just get some screw-on diopters for that type of shot. But, you know, even for this, it's pretty close focus, a little creepily too close, so I'm going to go ahead and back up now. Okay. All right, so 75mm now, and I'm a big fan of this focal length. I often use the 50 and the 32 just because of the type of stuff that I'm shooting, but the 75 might be my favorite, maybe the 50. But I always find 85 to be a little too tight, 50 a little bit too wide, and so any lens lineup that has a 65 or 75, I'm pretty into and really, really enjoy. So even at T2.4, on a 75mm at 25-ish feet away, you're still getting a pretty nice subject separation. There's some blur in the background, blur in the foreground, and even though the lenses aren't the fastest, they do render their autofocus areas really nicely. And so I think even for a slower lens, it has a really nice sort of background blur and subject separation. But this is sort of the ultimate B-roll lens and is really, really, really nice for that purpose. It's just something really nice about a lens that when you get, you know, close to 15, 12, 10 feet away, you still get a really nice background separation out of focus area. So here's the close focus on the 75mm, and if I turn on autofocus, the Ronin 4D doesn't like that all that much when I'm that close. So I'm just gonna try to stay in focus right about there. And Again, it's not incredibly focused, definitely not macro by any means, but you can still get, you know, detailed shots of people's faces, hands, people doing things with something like the 75mm. So this is the longest focal length in the lineup, the 100mm. I'm hoping they come out with something like a 135 or 150 sometime soon. We'll see. I mean, they just expanded it to an 18, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was maybe 1 or 2 more lenses on the longer end coming in the near future. But this lens is absolutely gorgeous. We've done some really beautiful shots with this lens. Especially when you're filming action from far away on the Ronin 4D, it still works pretty great. I wouldn't necessarily run around or walk with this lens on the Ronin 4D, but if you're saying do a boat-to-boat shot, then this would actually work really, really well and has worked really well. Now, the 100mm is also great to use as a B cam in interview setups. If you have a 32 or 50 as your A cam, which is a little bit wider, showing the room or a bit more of the environment of where the subject is sitting, the 100mm is great to get that sort of second side angle, get a little tighter on someone, show some hands moving, or, you know, just getting those detailed shots on people's eyes. I've been using the 75 and the 100mm a lot for that purpose. And again, beautiful lens. I can't complain about these lenses at all. They're gorgeous. Yeah, come on, son. So final thoughts on these lenses. For me personally, I have been wanting a 500 to 600 gram prime lens set for a really long time. I just love that size, and I think that T2 to T2.4 range is fast enough. Obviously, it's always great to get something faster, but I'd rather have a smaller and well-built lens than a faster aperture in most use cases. And so as I've been using these lenses on a feature documentary, the T2.4 is plenty fast enough, and they're just gorgeous as well. They have a beautiful rendering, they render skin tones incredibly well, and paired with the Ronin 4D 8K, they are really, really nice. I probably wouldn't buy these lenses strictly because of the price tag, but if you're a DP on a feature doc and you're going to rent them back to the production for 50 or 60 days, then they start making a lot of sense. And that's luckily the position I'm in for the next 18 months. As I build out this lens set, I'm just increasingly excited to use them on more and more projects, whether it's commercial, documentary. They're kind of perfect for everything, perfect on the 4D, and also just great to put on any cinema camera because they're lightweight, easy to use, and just gorgeous lenses. And this 18 is super cool. So I'll have to get this soon. I mean, look at this thing. It's crazy.